We're about to dive into one of the most passionate, tragic, and honestly, brilliant stories in the entire history of art. It's a story of blinding color, of profound darkness, and of a legacy that was almost completely lost to time.
Right? These are the questions that just haunt the legend of Vincent van Gogh. This was a man who literally gave us a new way of seeing the world, but he could never quite find his own place in it. And to really truly understand his art, we have to understand his pain.
So before he ever picked up a paintbrush, Vincent was a bit of a lost soul. Born in the Netherlands back in 1853, he was this quiet, super restless guy who was just desperate to find his purpose. He bounced from career to career, country to country, looking for a calling that honestly just kept shutting the door in his face.
I mean, just look at this timeline. The speed of his failures is kind of breathtaking. He tried being an art dealer, following his uncle's footsteps, but he was too passionate, not enough of a salesman. So he becomes a teacher in England, then a bookseller, then a preacher in this really grim, poor mining area called the Bornage, but his intensity was just too much. Get this, he was fired for being too committed. At every single turn, it's like the world was telling him, nope, you don't fit here.
In this quote, wow, it just cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it? This is a cry from the soul, written to the one person who never ever gave up on him, his brother Theo. You can feel it, right? Vincent knew there was this fire inside him, this deep, desperate need to give something to the world. But he had no clue what it was. He was at absolute rock bottom.
And then, in 1880, he's 27 years old, he's failed at literally everything, and he makes a choice. With the support of his brother Theo, who would end up funding his entire career, Vincent decided, okay, I'm going to be an artist. And you gotta understand, this wasn't some casual hobby. This was it. This was a final, desperate gamble on his own soul.
And he went all in. With no formal training, he taught himself with this ferocious, all-consuming obsession. He devoured books on anatomy and perspective. He copied the masters he admired, like Jean-François Millet, who painted peasants with this incredible, raw dignity. And he just drew, constantly. People called his early stuff clumsy, but you could already see this raw power, this deep empathy for the poor, working people he lived among.
Now here's the thing, when you think of Van Gogh, you think of bright yellows and swirling blues, right? Well, his career didn't start in light, it started in darkness. The Potato Eaters is gritty, it's somber, it's almost brutal in its honesty. He wanted to show the dirt under their fingernails, the steam rising from the potatoes, the earthy reality of their lives. It's a masterpiece of empathy, but it's all painted in the gloomy colors of the North.
But then, everything changes. In 1886, he moves to Paris, and it's like going from a black and white movie to full Technicolor. He leaves the gray skies of the Netherlands and lands smack in the middle of an artistic revolution. For the first time, he sees the dazzling light and explosive color of the Impressionists, and he is just blown away.
Just look at this transformation on the screen. It's night and day, literally. On the left, you have his Dutch period, dark, heavy, grounded in the earth. On the right, after seeing Impressionism and these amazing, vibrant Japanese prints in Paris, his palette just explodes. Color is suddenly not just about what things look like, it's about what they feel like. And that discovery sent him hurtling south, chasing a sun that he now knew he couldn't live without. And in Arles, in the south of France, he thought he'd found paradise. The sun there was a revelation. He rented that famous yellow house, and for this one brief, shining moment, he was filled with so much hope. He had this beautiful dream of creating a studio of the South, a place where artists could all live and work together, a real brotherhood.
And his work, it just caught fire. In a little over a year in Arles, he was painting at this feverish, unbelievable pace. He created some of the most iconic images in all of art history. The radiant sunflowers, his peaceful bedroom, that haunting night cafe. It was just an insane, dizzying explosion of pure creative genius.
Vincent's dream of an artist commune was so powerful, but only one artist actually answered his call. In October of 1888, the intimidating, hugely egotistical painter Paul Gauguin showed up at the Yellow House, and with his arrival, that beautiful dream started to curdle into a complete nightmare.
So Van Gogh imagined this perfect, harmonious little artist family. The reality? You had two massive talents with completely opposite personalities trapped together in a tiny house. Vincent was all emotion and spirit, Gauguin was cynical and arrogant. Their arguments about art, about life, just got more and more intense. That little yellow house became a pressure cooker, just waiting to blow. And then, it did. After one last terrible fight, Gauguin stormed out, and what happened next became the stuff of dark legend. Vincent, in a total crisis, grabbed a razor and cut off a piece of his own ear. Just like that, the studio of the South was over. The dream was dead.
For over 100 years, that was the story, plain and simple. But what if the story we all think we know isn't the whole truth? In recent years, a serious question has been raised, casting a huge shadow of doubt over that official version. Okay, so you've got two competing stories. The official one, Vincent, in a fit of madness, mutilated himself. But there's this other, pretty compelling theory. It suggests that Gauguin, who was an expert fencer, actually sliced off Vincent's ear with his sword during that final fight. The theory goes that they then made a pact of silence to keep Gauguin out of jail. We might never know for sure what happened that night, but one thing is certain, the incident absolutely shattered Vincent.
He was defeated, and he was terrified of his own mind. So Vincent voluntarily checked himself into an asylum. But here's the incredible, almost unbelievable part. This place of confinement, this prison, became the very place where he created some of his most cosmic, most mind-blowing work. The bars on his window couldn't hold back the universe swirling in his head.
This quote, it says it all, doesn't it? From his asylum window, he painted the swirling, electric energy of the starry night. He painted olive trees and cypresses that twist and writhe with his own inner turmoil. He was literally channeling his suffering directly onto the canvas, creating breathtaking beauty out of almost unbearable pain.
After a year, he was released from the asylum. He moved to Auvers-sur-Oise, a small town near Paris, to be looked after by a Dr. Gaucher. This is the final chapter of his life, and it lasted just 70 days. He painted with this frantic, desperate urgency, almost like he knew the clock was ticking down.
And here's a fascinating little detail. For decades, everyone thought that stormy, ominous painting, Wheat Field with Crows, was his final suicide note on canvas. But recent research suggests his very last work was actually this one, Tree Roots. It's this unfinished, almost abstract tangle of life, of struggle. On July 27, 1890, Vincent walked into a field and was shot in the chest. He managed to stumble back to his room, where he died 2 days later, with his beloved Theo right by his side.
Okay, get ready for this. In his entire 10-year career, after all that work, all that passion, that is the number of paintings he officially sold. One. Just one.
And this is the price his portrait of Dr. Gaucher sold for in 1990. The contrast between those two numbers is staggering. It's the heart of his entire tragedy. Just let that sink in for a second. He created over 900 paintings that would fundamentally change the course of modern art. He poured every ounce of his being onto those canvases. And he died at 37, completely and utterly convinced that his life and all of his work had been for nothing.
In the end, maybe calling it madness is just too simple. Maybe Vincent's story is really about a passion that was so intense, a sensitivity so profound that he could actually see the vibrating living soul of the world all around him, and he had no choice but to show it to us, even if it cost him everything.